I apologize. I was deep in thought and then the phone rang and here we are. So. How are things in the Amberian corner? Thank you so much. Don't want to forget anything. Good afternoon. This meeting is called to order. For the record, the time is 1:32. 2 minutes late. That's my fault. The date is October 14, 2025. The commission and staff are appearing from Helena, Montana in the Bollinger Room of the Montana Public Service Commission. I am Brad Molnar. I'm the presiding chairman for this meeting. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the record, the following commissioners are here. We have Commissioner Wellborn, Commissioner Panucci, myself, of course, Commissioner Bukacek, and Commissioner Fielder. Therefore, we have a quorum. All five are being present. The Public Service Commission welcomes any comment on any item that is on today's agenda or any matter that is within the jurisdiction of the Montana Public Service Commission. Are there any public commenters in the room? Do you have anybody registered? Okay. Seeing none, are there any public commenters online? Seeing none. I'm not aware of any changes to the agenda for today. Changes that would have been discussed in the scheduling meeting, and there weren't any. Action item number 1, approval of the minutes for the week, October 7th, 2025. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. President.
I make a motion to correct.
Mr. President, I think we first need a motion to approve and then a motion to correct. I think.
I'm sure I said, do we have a motion?
Yeah.
Do we have a motion? Apparently we have some discussion before we accept the motion. Commissioner Bukacek.
It's just a simple motion to correct 2 typographical errors. MISO is MISO. And the vote that was right before announcements was 2-2, not 2-0.
Motion is accepted.
I think I'll second the motion, Mr.
We have
President.
a motion for the amendment as stated. We have a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say same sign. The motion carries 5-0. Now, do we have a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
Mr. President, I move to adopt the minutes as corrected.
We have a motion, we have a second,
A second?
and we have a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes as amended? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign, 5-0. I'm going to begin the work session. And the first is 2025.03.026, Northwestern Services, LLC. Northwestern Services, LLC, application for a Class D Certificate of Public Convenience Necessity to consider a draft final order denying Northwest NWS's application. And which one at the table is going to be the lead on this? Yes, ma'am.
I will, Commissioner Molnar and Commissioners.
Northwest Services submitted an amended application for a Class D permit, a certificate of public convenience and necessity on April 29th of 2025. In its application, NWS requested authority to transport garbage between all points and places within Lincoln, Flathead, and Lake counties. The requested authority is limited to commercial roll-off service only. Evergreen Disposal and Allied Waste Services of North America, doing business as Republic, protested. The commission held a 2-day hearing on the application on July 16th and 17th of this year. The parties submitted post-hearing briefs and proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law, and orders. The members of NWS are Mitchell and Merrill Hill. The Hills live in Big Fork and seek to provide roll-off service in the Flathead Valley. They formed NWS as an LLC and purchased a trailer capable of hauling 13-yard and 18-yard roll-off containers in January of 2025. They applied for a Class D permit in March of 2025, and according to the MWS operating agreement for the LLC, the Hills will contribute 2 pickups, a new trailer, 4 roll-offs, and $5,000 in cash to NWS. The Hills also have a $136,000 line of credit, which they intend to use for NWS, along with a 1.5 acre parcel of property for a shop and for operations. The Hills contend a public need for additional roll-off services exists because Evergreen and Republic are failing to provide timely service and charging rates that are the highest in the state. The commission applies a 4-part test when determining whether public convenience and necessity require issuance of a Class D permit. Number 1, is the applicant fit and able to perform the services, the proposed garbage hauling service? Number 2, has the applicant demonstrated a public need for its service? 3, can existing carriers meet the need? And 4, if existing carriers cannot meet the need, will granting the permit nonetheless harm those existing carriers contrary to the public interest? So as explained in the attached order, staff is recommending denying NWS's application on the ground they failed to meet the threshold test of fitness. So that is basically the gist of this order. The analysis is focused on the factors of fitness, and because the evidence was lacking on fitness, the recommendation is to deny the permit based upon that. And because fitness is a threshold issue, if the commission denies or finds that the applicant has not established fitness, there's no need to analyze the remaining factors of public convenience and necessity. And with that, more than happy to take any questions.
Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Panucci.
It seems like adding competition, the people always win because they get a chance for comparing prices. If they're not able to deliver the container or provide the service, they wouldn't be called. Tell me about fitness a little bit. What part of fitness are you concerned about here?
Commissioner Molinar, Commissioner Panucci, there are 5 factors that the commission analyzes in looking at fitness. And those include the financial condition of the applicant's intent or intention to provide the service, the adequacy of the equipment, whether there are illegal or allegations of illegal operations, and then also the experience of the applicant. And all of these factors were weighed in this case. And this is a case where the evidence is lacking. And in order for the commission to make a finding of fact, there has to be evidence to support it. And here, that's really the issue. The evidence was lacking on financial condition. The evidence was lacking as far as experience goes. And what the evidence did show is that the financial condition of the applicant lacks any evidence of the ability to get any financing. The applicant said he could get financing, but didn't submit any evidence of any ability to do so. The applicant said this is the evidence he wanted to present to the commission in support of his application. And that evidence consisted of 2 pickups, a trailer capable of hauling smaller roll-offs, 13-yard and 18-yard, and then $5,000 in cash and $136,000 line of credit. In looking at fitness, the commission has to determine fitness in the context of its precedent. And that's what the conclusions of law portion of the order discuss, is basically looking at what does the commission need for fitness to be established. And essentially it's an ability to maintain and acquire the equipment that's needed to provide the service for the requested territory. And so here the evidence basically consisted of 2 pickups, a trailer, 2 roll-offs, or 4 roll-offs, excuse me, 2 of each size. And they did have a $136,000 line of credit. But when it comes to financial condition, the plan of the applicants was to immediately hire drivers, immediately purchase trucks or a truck and more roll-offs than the 4. And that's dependent on the ability to obtain financing, because $136,000 is not a small sum, but in the context of operating year-round on a regular basis in a 3-county territory, being able to acquire that equipment and then also maintain it goes beyond $136,000 line of credit.
Follow up.
Sure.
If they were to reapply and fix these concerns you had, how soon could they reapply?
Immediately.
Thank you.
Any further questions from commissioners? I have 1 or 2. Were they given an opportunity to push back on this finding that they don't have the wherewithal to go forward? Did they come forward and say, you know, here's how we're going to do it? You're overlooking something. Were they told about this, and did they respond?
No, Commissioner. Unfortunately, the process is that the evidentiary hearing is held, and then the parties have the opportunity to present any, post-hearing briefing and proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law. If you'll notice, this order is structured as findings of fact and conclusions of law. The parties did present those in this case, and the applicant has the opportunity to look at what the protestants submit and then do a reply, and the applicant waived, any reply in this case. And so to that extent, they had the opportunity to see what the protestants had to say about their application, but not the commission. Once the case is submitted, based on the evidence that was presented at the hearing and then the parties' post-hearing submissions, then the commission makes a decision. There's not an opportunity to say, hey, we have all this other evidence we'd like to put on now to fortify our application. Unfortunately, they can't do it in this proceeding, but they're welcome to do it in another one. Unfortunately, it probably entails retaining counsel again and going through the hearing process again.
Okay, I'm a little surprised that much like being a banker or looking at a loan, you don't look at papers, look at their competitors and make a decision. You call the person in and talk to them first. I'm gonna give you, for example, out of my own life. Okay, so I woke up one morning, I didn't have a job. I've been selling steel buildings. So I started selling steel buildings, but I had no money. If anybody didn't pay when that truck arrived, I was in serious trouble. That kept on until my wife said, can you please get into a business where we can make a house payment? The next thing, 10 years later, I was the largest York dealer in the nation 3 times, and the world 3 times. It's not about financials sometimes, it's about a willingness to go out and do it. Somehow they got into the business already, and they know what is required better than we. So I understand that you as an attorney look at precedent. If we voted in favor of Northwest, and they just went out and did it based on what they have, would that not be up to the consumers in that area as to whether or not they're successful in maintaining their contracts as opposed to us?
Commissioner Molnar, unfortunately, the commission is not a bank. The commission is a governmental entity. The commission is charged with making decisions in contested case proceedings, which this is. There is a body of law developed around the elements that an applicant must establish by a preponderance of the evidence. Forgive me for getting into legalese, but there is a process, there is a structure, there is law. And when you look at the law and take the evidence that was presented at hearing and apply the law to those facts, this was the recommendation that was made by staff. The commission is free to make whatever decision they want, but unless it's supported by the law, there could be an appeal and it could just be overturned and you'd end up doing it again. I'm not saying that this decision is necessarily right. I feel confident about the legal analysis that is included in the proposed order. But if the commission wants, for example, to say, well, we're not comfortable with this, we'd like to find that fitness was established, then what would happen procedurally is that that I would have to seek an extension of the deadline to issue a decision from 90 days post-protest to 120, give us an extra 30 days. And then I would incorporate all of the other analysis about public need, ability of the existing carriers to meet the need, and any harm to those carriers from the new provider coming into the market. So you're not obligated to accept this decision, but when all of the factors of fitness were evaluated based on the evidence that was presented at hearing, and you do balance all the factors, it's not limited to just one of the fitness factors. That decision basically is they didn't meet the threshold to establish their fitness.
Okay, I understand that. One of the criterion, I believe, I don't know if you mentioned it or not, and this is a remembrance from back when this commissioner was a commissioner with color in his hair. One of the main things that we looked at was statements from people in the community that the service was not being met. Was there any evidence gathered by them or by those that would be opposing this to show that the current providers are or are not meeting the need?
Yes, Commissioner Molnar, there was evidence presented at hearing on public need. Those come in the form of what we call shipper witnesses. Some shipper witnesses did testify. That evidence is not analyzed in this proposed order because the threshold issue of fitness, the determination is that that was not established. If the commission decides that based on the evidence and the precedent that fitness was established, then the evidence of public need would be analyzed and a more full order would be issued. You know, I guess in looking at the issue of fitness and just coming from the conclusions of law here, you look at past decisions that are as close as possible to a case like this. And there was a decision issued by the commission last year in 2024, Southeast Garbage. And when you look at that application and the evidence that was presented in that proceeding, a difference of becomes kind of salient. And that difference was that the applicants in that case brought in a banker to say, I know these people, they run a good business. It was a long-standing oil field business. They know trucks, they know equipment, they have CDLs, they're ready to go. They have employees in place ready to go. And this banker said, I'd lend them $2 million in startup costs. Here, the evidence was, this is what we have. This is what we chose to present in support of our application, and it's not insignificant. It does demonstrate an intent to engage in the business of roll-off service in the Flathead. But what they didn't have was what happens when the $136,000 runs out? How are you going to acquire that truck or those trucks? How are you going to hire the driver? And there was no evidence about any ability to, any continuity beyond the $136,000. No evidence of an ability to get financing. In addition, in contrast with the applicants in Southeast Garbage, those applicants, there were 3 of them. They all had CDLs. They had experience operating heavy equipment. They had run a successful business. So there was a little bit more meat and to their intent, and there was a significant amount of experience. Now that you can't keep people out of the market just because they don't have an experience in this particular business of garbage hauling. People will have relevant experience, and here the Hills have experience in the construction industry with heavy equipment and business experience on the part of Merrill Hill. But then you get to the equipment, which currently is 2 pickups, a trailer, and 4 roll-offs. And then you get to experience in the actual business of operating. And the testimony about intent to engage in the operations and the experience, when you look at that, there wasn't a clear plan for operations. There were some numbers run in the form of an informal pro forma to give the applicants an idea of, you know, a break-even point, whether this is a viable business. They were convinced it was. The existing carriers put on evidence questioning that and talking about expenses in operating a roll-off business and maintaining the equipment. And when you look at the evidence as a whole, it made it clear that there isn't a clear plan, that the lack of experience matters. And when you consider that with the financial condition and no evidence about the ability to get financing, it just led to the conclusion that fitness was not established in this case. Is the evidence out there? Very likely it is. Was it presented? No. So the commission cannot render a decision on information that isn't in the record. Have to rely on just the evidence that was presented. And Commissioners Fielder and Bukichuk were both present. And so they heard the evidence. And this decision is based upon the evidence that was presented.
Any Commissioner Fielder?
Thank you, Mr. President. Before we go into a motion and debate amongst just the commission, I just wanted to ask Pam a couple of things. As I recall, there was, you mentioned just now that there wasn't any evidence relating to their ability to financially continue steady operations. And as I recall, the applicant presented revenue projections. They had a series of revenue projections showing their anticipated revenues and their anticipated costs. And do you consider that to be evidence?
Oh, certainly. Yes, Your Honor.
Sure.
Yes, Commissioner.
So there was some evidence to the viability of the company to be able to sustain itself going forward besides the $136,000 line of credit, right?
The evidence that was in the pro forma is discussed in detail in the order. And the pro forma was certainly a business plan is not required. Certainly it included numbers of projections from income generated by the roll-offs.
Right. So, Mr. President, Pam, I was just getting at it. I don't think it's correct to say there wasn't any evidence on that. There was some. Was it compelling and persuasive enough? That's a different question, right?
Certainly, and I don't know that I said there was no evidence of finances. There was no evidence of the ability to get financing. That's all. That's all I was referring to when I'm talking about no evidence on that. Certainly there was evidence about what the applicants intend in operating, and when you look at that evidence in the context of other proceedings for applications for CPCN, the evidence was less clear. It wasn't as extensive. And as I said, the evidence here was disputed by the protestants. And so when you look at all of the evidence in context, then it leads to questions about the viability of the numbers that were crunched by the applicant.
And Mr. President, a couple follow-ups, please.
Sure.
I thought the revenue projections were interesting and seemed somewhat persuasive. The operating cost estimates didn't seem like they were necessarily that robust. Could have been lacking. And also the service territory that was requested here included all of Lincoln County and then a pretty good chunk of Lake County and Flathead County. And this is a little startup company. If they had applied for a smaller service territory, do you think that they would have been able to have made a stronger application and demonstrated their financial fitness, met the financial fitness test if they had kind of matched the service territory to the existing equipment and operations capability that they have now?
As a lawyer, I hesitate to give an advisory opinion on behalf of the commission, but I hear your question, Commissioner Fielder, and it's difficult to speculate on evidence presented in a different context. But if the territory had been smaller, again, I hate to say, oh, certainly then a permit should be granted because the territory is smaller. It would all have to be in context. And that might have an effect, certainly.
So thank you. If the commission approves this application, there's in my opinion, I don't speak for the full commission on this, there's a very high likelihood that it would be litigated, and the commission, let me rephrase that. There is a chance that it would be litigated,
And the commission would have to defend its order approving the application. So we'd have to go to court if it's contested and appealed to a court. We would have to defend our decision there. And it appears to me that what you're saying here is we don't have a strong defense should that happen, given the evidence that's in the record now. Is that fair to say, or is that another question you can't answer?
Commissioner Molnar, Commissioner Fielder, that's a fair evaluation. We do have a case that is currently on appeal.
And it's rather expensive for not just the commission, but for the applicants to go through that appeal process through the courts, is it not?
Certainly.
Yeah, and time consuming.
Yes.
Thank you. I think those are all the questions I have of staff, Mr. President.
Any further? Would someone like to make a motion? Okay,
So the ability to meet their revenue projections, I mean, their ability to meet that, it goes back to what they said they would immediately need to do is have 300,000 to 400,000 to hire drivers and purchase additional equipment. Wouldn't that would have been part of their revenue projections, is having that money?
Commissioner Bukacek, Commissioner Molnar, I wouldn't, no, I would have to respond with no to that, because their projections for revenue were included in their pro forma, which was based upon rates. They had a daily rate, a weekly rate, and a monthly rate projected across all 4 containers being rented out 100% of the time down to 20% of the time. That's the way they did their projections. But then when they testified at hearing, it became clear the intention is really not to rely on that, but more to immediately start hiring drivers and purchasing equipment and more containers. And so their projections convinced them that it was a viable business with the equipment that they currently have. But I would have to say that the protestants did also put on evidence that questioned the viability of those numbers, and basically put that evidence into a situation where it was conflicting. So that leaves the commission as the fact finder to make a decision based on all of the evidence. And it's outlined in the order in detail. And so upon reading it, if you're convinced that fitness has been met, then this order would not be the commission's decision, this proposed order. It would simply be a partial order that would then be fleshed out with public need, that analysis. And then you determine whether public need was established with sufficient evidence, and fully analyze all of the elements of public convenience and necessity versus just fitness.
do you have further questions?
Yes. And their containers were 13 and 18 yards, not the typical 30-yard.
That's correct,
That's-
Commissioner Bukacek.
Any further questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move to approve the draft order as the commissioner's final order denying Northwest Services application on the basis of fitness and authorizing staff to make non-substantive edits as needed.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion as stated? Commissioner,
I wish to defend my motion.
Okay.
though my defense does not require any additions to all the work that you've done and then what you told us today, voting to deny the application of a small business startup that is attempting to provide competition, that will always be met with mixed feelings. However, these Class D cases are not about feelings, but about the mandate we have from the legislative branch. Despite attempts and good intentions, each legislative session, at least since 2021, to alter PSC obligations in Class D cases, we public service commissioners are still held to the threshold requirement of fitness of the applicant. And if fitness doesn't have a standard, then we lose our credibility. I have attended every Class D case, either remotely or in person, ever since I've held this position. I take these extremely seriously. The evidentiary record in this case fails to establish that Northwest Services is in a financial position to perform its proposed services. Therefore, the applicants have failed to meet their burden of proof for fitness. As Ms. Snyder-Barnes stated in her summary, Northwest Services produced evidence of assets consisting of 2 pickups, a trailer, 4 roll-offs, $5,000 in cash, and $136,000 line of credit available to begin its operations. Northwest Services, the applicants chose to not submit evidence of other assets or other finances sufficient to pursue services they estimated to require immediately $300,000 to $400,000 to hire drivers and purchase additional equipment. The applicant's residential property, they estimated at $1.8 to $2 million, but there was no evidence produced to support that value. Applicant Mitchell testified the Hills intend to contribute the parcel of commercial property they own to Northwest Services, but did not produce evidence of the value of that property. There was no evidence of attempts to use either parcel of property for collateral to obtain funding, such as from a bank. There was no banker present to vouch for the applicant's ability to obtain further financing for their startup. Fitness is the threshold requirement. Since fitness was not met, there's no need to analyze issues of public need or harm to the protestant. I stand by my motion.
Commissioner Fielder?
Thank you, Mr. President. I had the duty of chairing this hearing and meeting the applicants and their and the protestants as well. I want to congratulate the Hills on your baby. That wasn't out to be seen when you were in the hearing. So congratulations. It looked like you have a healthy little boy. So congratulations on that. So Mr. President, and commissioners, we have a startup business here that that demonstrates a lot of the capabilities and the qualities that are required under the law. They applied for a really large service territory with, pretty small little capabilities at the beginning. And so I felt the territory doesn't quite match the capability. And I think that because there wasn't evidence supporting some of the statements that they made, I'm not saying that I think they were being dishonest in any sense. In fact, I think my impression is that they're pretty darn honest, because they started trying to run this business and then found out they needed a license and immediately stopped. So they made some significant investment to get started and then realized, oh, you can't just go out. You have to have a license, because that's what the legislature has required in these cases. And so they've been working diligently, I think, to try to obtain the proper license and be able to run this business. And I suspect they could probably succeed at it. But I also suspect that given the record that we have, that it will be litigated by some very large corporations that can drag this out in court for a very long time and can be very expensive. So I note that paragraph 89 of this order says that Northwest NW Services is free to reapply for a PCN at any time. And I imagine this has been a learning experience and hopefully a useful one for the applicant. And that I would say that, hopefully that, they've been able to learn and understand this better. And we've done Our job, they had a fear hearing. The record lacks some significant evidence to demonstrate the fitness, although I do think they demonstrated need in some of the service territory, not all of it. The record was pretty weak when it came to Lincoln County. I think that the witnesses that we heard from in Flathead and Lake County, the shipper witnesses of the competitor companies gave compelling testimony regarding some deficiencies in the existing services being provided in that area. So I do think that this company is on its way to being able to meet the thresholds required under the law for a PCN, but they're not quite there yet. And so I will be supporting the motion today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other comments now that the motion has been made and seconded? Mr. Bukacek, comment.
I just wanted to iterate, my motion is not based in any way, shape, or manner on fears of litigation. My motion is based on the lack of fitness, that is based on that lack of fitness based on the evidentiary record.
Is there any further comment or question? I have one quick question. To the best of your remembrance, don't have to run out and look this up. How long did it take from the time they applied until today?
We're approaching, is it? They applied in March. Their application was amended to clarify that their service was going to be roll-off services only on April 29th, and today is October 14th.
Oh, what, about 8 months?
So not even that, Commissioner. It's a very tight deadline.
If the motion is passed, and if they wanted to refile, how long would it take, assuming they had new evidence to present, et cetera, about how long do you think it would take for a second go, seeing as how a lot of things have already been done?
Commission is obligated to set a hearing within 60 days from the date of the protest. Would be
Okay,
the first protest.
okay, here's what I'm thinking before I cast my vote. There's a serious flaw in the idea that you must be able to prove that you have a certain level of capacity before you can start a business, maybe in the regulatory regime. Many businesses are started based on cash flow. So what will you do when the money is gone? I'll take what I need out of the bank and keep going because I've been making money. Many businesses that are very, very settled suddenly find themselves on cash flow only and then on bankruptcy. I don't know what to do about that, but I do know that if we do not pass this, the applicants will be in court immediately, as Commissioner Fielder pointed out, against some very, very, very big people. And it could be 2 or 3 years before they could tee up again. If we do this, in 6 months, they could be up and running if they took notes on what they had to do and went and did it. So it might be a rough justice vote, but I'm not voting to say no. I'm saying tee it back up and get back in the game. So all those in favor of the motion to accept staff's recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
4-1.
No, I was just late voting. I voted with the majority, Mr. Chairman.
That's what I said, 4-1.
You didn't call for the no's yet, I don't think, or we didn't hear a no.
Oh, we did.
I come up with a 5-0.
How did you vote? I could have swore I heard you. I could have swore I heard you. Okay. Those opposed, say aye. Or are you abstaining?
Just-
Okay. 4-0-1. One abstention, that being Commissioner Panucci. The motion carries. Okay, item number 2024.05.053, Northwestern Energy, application for authority to increase retail electric and natural gas rates. To consider rejecting the partial electric settlement between Northwestern and multiple interveners and directing staff to schedule a hearing on the issues of the Yellowstone County Generation Station, coal strip plant, and other issues. By other issues, just so you know, it is my intention that the Northern Cheyenne part of that rate case and the U of M part of that rate case, and subject to any interest to the contrary, the natural gas rate case. So I'm looking strictly at the basically the coal strip and Yellowstone Generation Station. So is there any discussion before I make the motion?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So this purpose, you're the one that came up with what the purpose is. And at the end, and it talks about the things that you talked about, but it said your intention is to direct staff to schedule a hearing on the issues of Yellowstone Generation Plant and Colster Plant and any other issues without any black boxes. So
Right.
when you spoke just now, you didn't mention the black boxes. And I think
Okay.
that's a key part to understanding what you're trying to do here.
It is. As a matter of fact, it's the first thing I addressed in my little soliloquy of facts here.
I have questions for staff before your soliloquy.
Certainly.
But I'll come up. I don't know who'd be or one or all. So the term, I'm going to give a little introduction, and I'm not even sure there's a question in here, but I think there is. So the term black box, it often carries a negative connotation, such as on medical prescriptions, a black box warnings means, be careful. This could harm you. I don't personally place a negative connotation on the term black box in rate cases because there are positives and negatives to my understanding of the term black box in rate cases. So what I wanted to do, if you'll indulge me, is read you my understanding of what the black box in rate cases refers to. And then if you could correct me if I'm wrong or add anything qualifying to that. So my understanding is black box in rate cases refers to anything kept confidential, whether it in a negotiation process, whether it's bids, proprietary models, contracts, and so kept confidential in negotiations between utilities and a select group of parties. So discussions and potential compromises made during these negotiations are typically confidential. Is that accurate?
President Molnar and Commissioner Bukacek, we are not prepared to give a definitive definition of what black box is here today, but generally I would agree with what you said. There are general attributes of what we refer to as a black box, and there are some aspects of the electric settlement that are consistent with that, and the reasons you discussed for why settlements or black boxes are kept confidential, I would agree with.
Any further questions?
Go ahead.
I have a different line of questioning, Mr. President, and I just want to get some things clear about the timing of this. Ms. Webster, what is the staff's timetable for completing its analysis on this case and bringing a fact sheet or your analysis to the commission?
President Molnar and Vice President Fielder, staff is currently planning on bringing a recommendation to the commission in mid-November with a final memo to all commissioners on the 13th for the following business meeting.
Okay, so as far as today's work session, I don't see any documents supporting, or there's nothing in the folder here. So staff didn't have anything for us on this?
Vice President Fielder, that is correct. Staff is not done with its analysis and has no advice to provide regarding the motion at this time.
Okay. So regarding the statutory timetable for the case itself, uh, what, at what is the deadline for the commission decision on this case?
President Molnar and Vice President Fielder, the deadline for the commission to issue its final order based on 90 days from the close of briefing in this case, I calculate as November 24th, and the commission has the ability to extend that for another 30 days, which would put it somewhere around December 24th. Given the volume of this case and the arguments presented, staff would likely recommend that the deadline be extended to December 24th to allow a time to prepare a final written order.
Okay, and if it is extended to December 24th, that's, that deadline would keep us out of the territory that we found ourselves in last spring, where the utility self-implemented its rate request because we hadn't acted in time. Are we running up against that kind of an issue here?
Vice President Fielder, this is a different deadline. The deadline for the utility to self-implement has already passed. So the deadline I'm talking about is in the Administrative Procedure Act and is the commission's obligation to issue a final written order within a timely period after the close of the case.
Okay, and if this, I assume it's going to be a motion. Did you make a motion yet, Mr. President?
No, it's
Okay.
open for.
Okay.
discussion.
I would assume, well, it looks like it's going to be a motion here to break this up and hold individual hearings. What kind of timetable would we be looking at? How would that relate to the statutory timetables that we're under?
Vice President Fielder, I haven't done a deep dive into what this would look like, but my initial impression is that if President Molnar's motion is granted, staff would look into how to reopen the record and receive new evidence and testimony. And so that would start the proceedings again. We would have to issue an order reflecting the commission's decision, and that could be may likely be subject to a request from reconsideration from the parties. So that would be something we'd decide. We'd work with the parties to set additional procedure if that's the way we decide to go, and it could be months depending on the parties' schedule, maybe even into the new year.
Okay, so what you're describing to me is process. What I'm trying to get at is I don't want to see us get into another issue where we have failed to meet the statutory deadlines and we end up with regulated utility implementing rates that haven't been approved by the commission. So can you just help me understand where we're at procedurally with that question in mind?
President Molnar, Vice President Fielder, just to clarify, Northwestern did self-implement the partially stipulated rates July 2nd of 2025, and those are still the rates in effect today.
Okay, I understand that. And we went back and allowed Northwestern to amend their, they self-implemented the full rate of their initial request and then came back in with a revised rate. So it was a rate reduction that this commission approved. I'm trying to recall, I think that was based on the in part on settlements that they had reached. Was it not? So how would opening this back up relate to that? Does that open up that that issue again on the self-implementation?
Vice President Fielder, my understanding is that the interim rates would stay until there is a motion to change them. The commission could do that, the parties could do that, but for the time being, we aren't expecting a change in interim rates. But as time goes on, the longer a final decision is not made, there is a chance that a request could come from the applicant to change what's been in place, given the circumstances.
Okay. If the commission were, I guess, how long did you know about, or did staff know about this work session request? Did you have time to prepare something for us and just decide not to? Or, I mean, where, this is really unusual to get a work session request for such a major issue and there's no supporting documentation, no guidance, no fact sheet, there's nothing here. So what's going on here? Why don't we have anything like that?
Vice President Fielder, I believe staff became aware of this work session request originally sometime around September 30th, 2025. Staff has been working on its recommendation for the decision on the full rate case and has been doing that for months at this point since the close of briefing. And even before then, staff has been preparing its full recommendation. It's continued to do so. We have prepared to answer questions that are here today and have been open to meetings with commissioners about the issues that were presented, but staff has not been directed to prepare a specific recommendation on this issue, and we haven't had the bandwidth to do so.
I understand that. Thank you. Is there a possibility that the staff analysis may lead to a recommendation that the settlements not be accepted?
Vice President Fielder, that is a possibility. Staff's recommendation could encompass a wide variety of flexibility the commission has in its final decision.
Okay. So is there any particular reason why this decision needs to be made today or should be made today?
Vice President Fielder, to staff's knowledge, there is no particular reason for this decision to be made today. And staff does believe that the commission could benefit from staff's complete analysis on the settlement before having a vote on all the issues regarding the electric settlement.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. President.
Any further questions or comments? Commissioner Bukacek.
So you did send us an email Friday at about 4:30 in the afternoon that gave a lot of information about the case. And then the last full paragraph goes back to that date of November 18th business meeting. If this is not voted for today, if this fails, are you still planning to present recommendations to the commission at the November 18th business meeting?
Yes.
So that's 4 weeks away. President Molnar?
Certainly.
So I'm a stickler about the black boxes because that you're saying other issues without any black boxes. So you're asking for a hearing without any black boxes, with everything to be laid out, everything in the negotiation. Nothing is going to be accepted by a negotiation. Everything has to be out in public, every single thing. Is that correct?
I don't know exactly how you're thinking about that, but I'll try and answer as closely as I can. A black box settlement means, in the way we use it here, is that various parties, interveners, get together, date, time, and place not announced. We have no idea where they were, why they were doing. They come out and they say, we have an agreement. And in this case, there's like 5, and I don't know how many interveners there were. However, we are not going to discuss anything around the agreement. Here's the agreement. And they stick with it. I asked Lucas, I said, because, I've been working on this a long time, actually. I said, when they say, I'm sorry, I can't discuss that. That's part of the negotiation. I see our counsel is nodding her head because that's exactly the way it works. So you have, just for example, you have Northwestern. They say we're not going to answer that question. We have Montana Consumer Council. Well, we signed on too, so that's too close to what we're talking about here. That's the black box, a secret meeting, which I asked Lucas, I said, can I, as the person chairing the hearing, hold them in contempt for failure and refusal to answer a legitimate question? And he said yes. I said, oh, what is it? Is this like a secret handshake? Is this a gentleman's agreement? Well, he says it's like a gentleman's agreement. I asked him again about a month later. Yes, I've been working on this a long time. And he said, no, I've thought about that. It's actually a contract. It might be verbal. It might be something. I respectfully submit in a public hearing of the Public Service Commission to have them say, I agreed with him, I'm not going to answer your question, is the definition of a black box. Secret meetings generating private conversations that determine what will and will not be discussed. All of these things have tentacles. You can talk about rate of return and agree on that, but if you don't know what the expenditures are, you've got a problem. And you'll just find out what history tells you. So no, that's what I think a black box is. She went to lawyer school. Well, I was going to redneck school, and we both agree. So I have to be right.
So you're saying that there's no, I mean, negotiations of rate cases usually, I mean, if you're trying to come to a settlement, it requires negotiating, multiple parties, it requires negotiating. In my experience with negotiations related to the PSC work is that they are confidential and legitimately so. There is certain information that is legitimately kept confidential. So to say that all these things are going to be, we have to have a hearing and everything needs to be discussed without any black boxes. You're saying that you're making it extremely, that would make it extremely difficult to come to a settlement because there would be no confidential negotiation.
With all due respect, you're wrong. What you're talking about calling a black box, and I suppose it is, kind of, sort of, it would be confidential information. They filed a confidentiality request. We've all signed a confidentiality thing. We can go look at it. We know what we're looking at. We just can't talk about it. This is not that. There is no confidentiality agreement. There is no confidentiality pledge. This is special interest carving up the cat as they want it to be and telling us we're not talking about anything else. And as a chairman, as a commissioner, as a member of the public, we should be appalled that the Consumer Council representing the, in this case, constitutionally representing the ratepayers would say, I'm not going to give that answer to the commission because I don't want them to make a decision based on it. I'm saying.
Point of order, that sounds like it's disparaging against the Montana Consumer Council representative.
Duly noted. The fact of the matter is there is a place for confidentiality for trade secrets. The process to get to that ever since Montana, Chicago, Great Falls Tribune versus Montana Public Service Commission has been way more strident. Not everything goes in just because it's requested. It has to actually meet certain criteria. So that is not this. It was never intended to be this. It cannot be construed to be this. I think that you're correct, and I've thought about how to present this. You're partially correct. I'm a member of the Montana Public Service Commission. For at least another week, I'm probably the president of the Montana Public Service Commission. I do not have the authority or the desire to tell MCC how to run their business. I'm saying I don't like it. He can like it just fine. I'm saying that, matter of fact, if Neil were here months ago, calls me into his office. He said, look at this, look at this. It's a rate case from 2010. And I'm giving Pat Corcoran at the time the Dickens. And it goes to this. What I said to him was, every rate case, you guys come in with this huge number. And then every rate case, you want to settle at the lower number. And we always do. How about the right number? Some of these monies are shifted, and the costs are being placed on small commercial, but shifted away from residential. Well, residential is who votes for us, but everybody should pay their fair share. So we need to know why the numbers are there and where they came from, or we cannot comply with the internal policy manual, which says staff recommendations must be based on fact, law, and regulatory principles. If the facts are locked up in a black box, how can you do that? Our job, a commissioner should base his or her decisions, deliberations, and votes on the law and the facts. You can't do that if somebody says, we wanted to negotiate, so we're not going to tell you anything. Well, okay. It's not okay. What are the facts? That's our job. And that's what I'm trying to do here today.
Clarification, Mr. President?
I have answered your question. I would like to move on. This is not really a argument where we.
Well, I'm just asking for clarification.
Please
You
do.
brought forth. So still goes back, this is your language without any black boxes. So you're talking about a general black box.
I'm
Any
talking
black
about,
boxes.
I'm talking about.
Any
excuse me,
black
I'm-
boxes means, it looks to me, if you could clarify it, but that English looks to me like you're saying, open everything up. There'll be no confidential meetings whatsoever.
I don't think that anybody could construe no black boxes created in secret meetings with properly filed confidentiality agreements. If you break that out here and say, well, it says back there in the room, 7.3, you're in serious trouble. If I say about the 7.3 you mentioned, where'd you get that number? It's already a public statement. I have a right to know. Okay, sure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have been frustrated in the past by settlements coming to us and not being able to dig into facts that are locked up behind those settlement agreements. So I'm empathetic to, I think what you're trying to do here. Do you believe that if we open these up, that we, is it your intent to actually be able to represent the ratepayer better than Montana Consumer Council is doing right now? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that we have an obligation to vote based on fact and law, and facts are being withheld from us. I have questions, and I'll get into those here in a minute, that are actually greater than the amount they're asking for. Questions that came up with no answers, no attempt at an answer, totally ignoring those that brought up the issue, so that those that wanted to effectuate a settlement ignored, and for whatever reason, they're the ones who quoted.
Thank you. So my other question for you is, why do you want to do this today instead of waiting for our analysts to be able to complete their analysis and bring forward the fact sheet and any recommendations that they
Finally an easy question. The more they go into their recommendation, the more time they spend on their recommendation without all the facts, to my way of thinking, is wasted time. You work with facts. That's all they can present. Not assumptions, not Northwestern staff talking to our staff and the recommendation comes from another black box. Rather, they should be going forward on the facts. How does that happen? Let's assume that we have a hearing, pre-hearing. I'm not quite sure when I gavelled this out last time, did I say we're done or did I say we're adjourned? But The original opening statements are still a matter of record. The closing statements might change. We might have to shorten up the time they get because we're just a little tight there. The original testimony is there. We can look at that and see what our questions are. It's probably a long 2-day process. We're going on the existing testimony and asking questions. I'm not trying to get into the new PCAM, which has a revenue requirement in that will affect this. I'm trying to take a look at what was said and what was skipped. How many times did you hear me ask a question on transmission and I was told, wait till Cashel gets here? Cashel gets here and I said, you've heard the question. What's the answer? He said, I forgot to review it. We never got an answer. I asked questions on a $62 million overrun. Being a former owner's representative on a site, I know about those things. I never got an answer. How many times were we told, wait for so-and-so, and then when come time, well, he was excused, he's not here anymore. It was a shell game. A shell game. It was embarrassing to be a part of it. We're not going to answer your questions, and the person you want to talk to says that he didn't read.
Point of order, you're making disparaging comments about
I happen to
a
find
utility
this
that we
disparaging.
have.
I find this very disparaging. So
There's a contested
the,
case before the,
I'm
for this organization that you are making disparaging comments about.
I'll try and recover from that. The contest, for example, the contested amount of the correct amount to allow for Yellowstone Generation Station to be affected by the secret meetings and subsequent black box settlements or findings. There was almost no hard evidence presented at the hearing. Just times were confusing. We're getting rid of this contractor, hiring another contractor. We wanted to get it done, so we paid him, and then we paid him to tear that down, and then we paid him to put it back up. $62 million was their quote. The alternative for us to look at, as required by law, is as a non-monopoly that's made the same decision, was never raised and needs to be. In other words, you thought you were going to come in at 250 million. Now the decision is, do we keep this contractor, stall things off for a month and bring this guy in, or do we keep going and pay him to tear it out and redo it? This guy has a problem. As a regulated monopoly, you can ask people to backfill that decision. If you're building a Walmart and you run into overruns, maybe you ran into great big boulders down there and you had to excavate them, and holy schmoly, now what? Do you raise your prices 10%, knowing that there's a Target store across the street? That decision was never explored here. Why should ratepayers backfill your decision to not hold the first contractor responsible? That was never asked. And that's crucial to a $62 million question. Dropping the plan for a separate fund for CU4, mercury, toxic air standards, no discussion. That's not going to use up a lot of time here. It's a settled case. Change of administration. Maybe in 3 years we'll be back in this one. It's not going to be that long of a deal to ask legitimate questions. On the partial settlement page, how many times did I ask about their supposed transmission experts about the dispute of a residential revenue credit of $173 million? That is not a small dispute. It's more than they're asking for. The 173 is held to be accurate by Northwestern Large Consumer Group. Thorvald out here, that fight went on for a couple of hours. So they offered a $3 million rebate. Why, if the 173 was correct? And what if it's only 10% of that? 17.3 million is worth a day out of our lives to ask a question about that. And we can use the conversations already held and start from there. Commissioners should want to understand this issue and ask hard questions instead of vote for staff recommendations who, unless we're coming up with it, I'm not aware of any answer as to why the very good attorney sat over there said there's $173 million rebate sitting there that people are entitled to. If she's off by half, it's $80 million. We don't have that answer. It was never generated by the conversation by Thorvald, anybody from Northwestern, and frankly, the lady from Natural Resource Defense Fund. I don't know. I have no idea what the right answer is. What I'm not going to do is say, here's 170 million back, thanks for the 3. What is the right answer? In 25 years, all cases from Montana Power have, or Northwestern have settled with a black box. Whatever is in there, we don't care. You ask for 100 million, you're saying make it 90. We're going to claim victory at 10, call it a day. Maybe victory was at 95. Maybe it was at 85. We don't know. It's time to stop it. Wildfire mitigation plan. The Northwestern Energy had like 6 people talking about it, and one lady, I think Mrs. Elwinkle, said they had a great study on the source of ignition for fires preparing for the wildfire mitigation thing and transmission lines. I asked, you may recall, how much or how many fires were started by your transmission, your distribution, your sub-distribution, BPA lines with your with co-op and your servicing people with distribution and sub-distribution. And she said, we did not look at that. Think about it. The thing you're studying is fires from transmission, and the one thing you didn't look at was fires from transmission. There's an answer in there. I have requested that they show me the minutes from those meetings. I haven't seen them yet. That's what, 2 months ago? 2 months ago? Apparently the confidentiality things just got handled. I know that I've been talking to Sarah about those for some time, and I don't know, 2, 3 weeks ago, she said, well, staff can handle that, or you can handle that. I said, what's the fastest? She said, we handle it. I said, do it. One of those things I requested was the agreement between the Forest Service and Northwestern Energy on fire things. You cannot have a private negotiation between the Forest Service and Northwestern Energy. That should have been here months ago. We don't have it. I'm tired of playing the game. I'm getting too old. And page 28, this slays me. If you reject this settlement, the deal is off. What's the deal? I have no idea what the deal is. I know that you're taking a sliver of the Yellowstone plant and saying, look at this, it's 4%. But you have to take it. How about that $65 million? No. Don't look at me and ask those kind of questions. I'm not paid to be here. Oh, wait, I guess I am. Okay, no comment. In addition, this was a 5-issue rate case. Northern Cheyenne, U of M, gas case, Yellowstone generation plant, and coal strip. They put 5 rate cases into one case. We have what, 6 or 7 rate analysts? Plus they had to go through the legislature and handle fiscal notes. We were at a well-known audit. Everybody knew exactly when it would hit. They hit us at the toughest time and said, give it to us in 9 months or we're going to set our own rates. And on the day of the 9th month, they did. At one, we would have been hard pressed to do anything. It cost, in numbers from Will, each year for his rate analyst team, about $750,000 for wages. Everything else comes to about $1 million. This case has been rocking around for about 2 years. We put 2 years into it, and then we walk away from what they know because we want to go with a 5-member settlement, all of which said $3 million is what we'll give you. The one that said it should be 173 is not quoted in any document I've seen so far. We owe this to the ratepayers. We're paid big boy wages. It's time to do a big boy job. And that means you study enough to ask good questions.
Mr. President, I would like to study this out and what you're telling us. I just, first of all, the Yellowstone generation plant is a contested matter that isn't inside a settlement agreement. So I don't understand your request here about, do you want to reopen the Yellowstone generation plant hearing? Because there was no settlement associated with the major component.
There was also a lot of questions not answered. And frankly, after sitting here for 8 days, I was getting tired. Everybody else was tired. It's not I'm saying that we revisit those 2 items. Nobody can come forward, but there's no settlement, and don't make one. Because depending on a few things, somebody might hit you with contempt. You're asked a legitimate question, give a legitimate answer, and by the way, no black boxes. Well, sorry, we made another deal. Well, times just got tough. So no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that those 2 items have been briefed. We have testimony. We can have new testimony if somebody wants to offer it. And we go into the record and ask legitimate questions and demand legitimate answers. You take those 2 items, 173 million and 65 million, you're talking almost $250 million we don't know anything about. We don't know. The record that was given from Northwestern was spotty at best. Our follow-up questions quite often didn't happen. And so far as some of the other interveners, when they're saying, well, if you look at it this way, you're going to get kind of close to our settlement, and we're not going to answer that. So the chain is broken. We must have an honest attempt at getting honest answers so staff can have honest facts to work with. We can have honest facts. We can challenge staff based on fact. They can challenge us back based on fact. It has to be based on fact, and we don't have the facts.
So Mr. President, I'm trying to gain clarification on what exactly it is that you want to address here. Is your intention to hold hearings on the portions of the rate case where settlements have been reached? Does that narrow it down?
No, I want to have hearings on the 2 items, coal strip and the Yellowstone plant. And they will be free ranging. They should be honest. They should be legitimate. The questions should be germane. The answers should be honest. And all of that will happen with full disclosure because there will be no black boxes.
Okay. I guess a question for staff on that. I mean, when we've held a hearing as we did in this case, it was a fairly robust hearing, several days. It was 8 days, wasn't it? If we still have questions after that weren't addressed, what is the mechanism for obtaining additional information?
Vice President Fielder, one thought I have that I think is important to note is that the applicant in a contested case proceeding has a burden to prove their case. And my recommendation, if the commission believes not enough facts were put forward by the utility applicant, the commission could make a decision that the applicant failed to meet its burden and deny the request. The commission does have flexibility in its actions, but my first recommendation would be to look at whether the applicant met its burden on the fully contested issue that's for the commission.
Okay, so are we beyond the point of being able to request additional information then?
Vice President Fielder, I would want to look into that a little bit more before giving a final opinion. I do think the commission has a lot of flexibility, but in this case, as has been mentioned, this was started in May 2024. There's been extensive discovery with all the parties involved, and I believe there has been fair procedure and a fair opportunity to ask any questions at this point. So I would not recommend reopening, but again, the commission does have a lot of flexibility to manage its proceedings and decide what is needed.
I'm going to chime in on that. Yellowstone Generation Plant is in my county. I can see its lights. Planes go around it. They, being Northwestern, said, I think it was Cashel, maybe not, that if you guys don't approve this, I'm going to sell that plant and you're going to have to go look for your electricity elsewhere because it's going to be gone. It will be gone if they do that.
Objection, mischaracterization of what he said.
I'll try and take the hit. Right now, to get a turbine for that sort of generator is about a 5-year wait. We told them to build a new one. It would be somewhere around 2030 before it opened, assuming no greater problems. They have 503 megawatts coming up. Would that fill in? Could be, because Montana Consumer Council said, you have 503 megawatts coming on. What the heck are you doing building a new plant? That's a very good question. It was never asked here because it was black box. So, to my way of thinking, if we don't get the answers, if we don't get legitimate, honest answers, how can I vote for a $65 million overrun when I'm not even sure that that's what it is? I don't want to vote to shut that plant down, but I also don't want to vote to saddle ratepayers with a $65 million overrun because I can't get the answers. I can't. How many fires were started by transmission, distribution, sub-distribution? We didn't look at that. I can spell Denton. There's one. So it was a game poorly played, and I want a game that is not a game. How many fires was it? 65 million. You paid $65 million to tear out something, and you paid the guy that built it, and then you paid somebody to tear it out. And were there any options? Well, they said, well, we had a tough time. You know, you get in there, you can't move this stuff around, tight place. You know, so we had all these. They're by a railroad siding where everybody over there unloads cars and trucks and everything. You can rent the space and put it there, pick up a all-terrain forklift and bring it over. So not only am I discouraged with the answers we didn't get, I'm discouraged with the answers we did get. I do not want to force the closure of a plant in my own neighborhood based on, I don't understand the $65 million. Based on, you know what, I think you're right for about 45, you know, using my prior experience, I think you're right for about 45 million. I can't say that because I have no idea.
Mr.
They
President.
had such a plethora of options. So what I'm trying to point out here is that for far too long, quarter of a century, we have never, ever said, you will tell me the truth. And near as I can tell, and my memory doesn't go back all that far, Montana Power was the same way. The people of Montana to know the facts. If we're going to close a plant down due to a lack of information, they need to know that we tried to get the information twice. If we say you're going to pay the $60 million in your rates, they need to know that we knew what we were talking about and we were willing to spend another 2 days here when, let's face it, we all got other things to do, but this is what we're paid to do.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion in this matter. I'd make a motion to defer this matter.
We have a motion to defer. Is there a second to that motion?
Second that, Mr. President.
We have a motion. We have a second. Is there any discussion?
I have some discussion, Mr. President. I don't disagree necessarily with what you're trying to do here. I would just like to have it presented more clearly. I'd like you to have some type of a memo for us. There's a lot of discussion here, a lot of, you're reciting what other people said. I don't know if it's accurate or not accurate, but I think it's irrelevant. I'd just like to have some clarity on this. I'd like to give our analysts an opportunity to provide, their expertise to the commission too, so that we can benefit from the work that we pay them to do for us, right? They're, what'd you say, about $1 million a year? So let's allow the commission to benefit from that work, and at least defer this for a little bit so we can kind of look into how do we, I just think we need to look at this carefully and figure out if there's a logical way to move forward, and with some input from our expert staff and some more discussion. So that's why I seconded the motion to defer. I just don't think we're ready yet to make this decision right now today. I think we need to get some more input on this, and I may support that if I have better information.
Well,
Mr. President?
okay.
So I agree with everything that Vice President Fielder said, and much of what you said, we didn't have access to the things that you said, but based on my recollection of the hearing, and I attended it, much of what you said did not comport with my recollection. If you gave us something in writing, we could then go and refer to our notes. We could refer to the document, as opposed to making a vote based on just things that you're saying, much of which does not comport with my recollection of the meeting. And I have a good memory.
Well, I appreciate your comportment, but if ever something was scheduled to die by bureaucratic lag, that's exactly what I'm hearing. We have a very, very tight time frame to do this and not have to get creative. We get creative, and we can wind up in court longer than it takes to do this. I've talked to one degree or another in a various time frame or another, 4 of the commissioners. There were general agreement that the people we needed to talk to were never here. Therefore, the questions went unanswered. That is not a matter of good recollection, bad recollection. Everybody recognizes it. If we put it off for a week, I'm not exact. Am I supposed to go through the court clerk files on this and find a quote that Commissioner Bukacek would find acceptable?
Mr. President, if I may.
I'm saying it is irresponsible to say we won't get started. If a week from now, everybody says we'd like to revisit this, it's on the table. But in the meantime, we have a job to do, and that is to find facts, to be fact finders. To be a fact finder, you have to be somebody with knowledge. To one degree or another on every one of these questions, we have knowledge on this commission, and we did not get answers. We got to dance. And if that makes somebody feel uncomfortable, I'm sorry, but that's what we got.
Mr. President, my motion is to actually allow our expert staff to provide some information to the commission, and for you to be able to write up what it is that you're trying to accomplish here. It doesn't have anything to do with the things you just discussed, frankly. I think, this is a work session request on a single sheet of paper with nothing to substantiate it, nothing to back up except what you've elaborated on here. Obviously, you have some written notes, but you did not share those with the commission. So I'm saying, if we're going to make a decision this big, we need to have some basis for it besides what you just discussed in the microphone here today on the spot. We had an 8-day hearing. We have comprehensive notes. We have an application that's thousands of pages long. So you're coming to us with one sheet of paper and asking us to make a monumental decision on this right now. And staff is telling us that what you're asking for may be coming, but they're saying, give us some time to actually complete our work so they can bring that expertise to the commission to benefit our decision and inform our decisions, right? I am willing to expedite this and work with you on, and work with the staff and the other commissioners on potentially accomplishing this. I do not think that it would be prudent or responsible to make that decision based on this one sentence is all we have here. And your sentence, frankly, does not make sense. So I think you should get it clear, bring it to us, bring it back again, bring it next week or whenever you're ready, but make it clear what you're trying to do and what the basis is, and provide some backup for your arguments or your position so that we can review that ahead of time.
Well, Commissioner, you were here via video for the whole time. You heard the things I heard. You saw the things I saw. For me to think that I will ever come up with a combination of words that make Commissioner Bukacek vote for this grants powers to me that have yet to be demonstrated.
Well, Mr. President, I will say
what I'm saying is you want more. A couple weeks ago, you asked me to move it so that you could be here.
yeah.
You get here, you say, I need more. I have not heard one question from anybody. The facts are clear. It's $173 million residential credit. Everybody said that number is right or that number is wrong, and then it went to 3 million. And I'm saying it's a game. If we cannot stay that we will rehear these two items for 2 days until the everybody is satisfied that this one page means something, it does mean something. It means we are going to get started on the process. I don't know where it's going to wind up. I know if it winds up too late in the day, if we wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we don't stand a chance.
So, Mr. President, you just said you want to boil it down to two issues. Your work session request here says to act upon motion rejecting NWE et al. Settlement on the current electric rate case and direct staff to schedule a hearing on the issues of Yellowstone Generation Plant and the Colstrip Plant and other issues without any black box. I just think when I asked to defer it, it was so that I could review what you were presenting, and you haven't presented anything yet. So that's what I'm asking for. Is just get your notes together, get your reasoning together, allow us to talk with staff about this and what this means and as far as our procedures and everything, and roll up our sleeves and work together on this. I'm perfectly willing to do that. But this came out of the blue with nothing behind it. So I can't say I disagree with where you want to go, but we have to have some kind of a basis for it so that we understand where that direction is.
I would hazard a guess the average person watching this is just a simple ratepayer, which could be 4 or 5, knows exactly what I'm talking about. I would point out that this would be historic. This has been a very, very, very historic year. We had Northwestern set its own rates. That was historic. We had us a month later accept a new rate schedule.
Mr. President, I'd ask us to stick to the motion, please.
That was historic.
Mr. President,
This is historic.
Point of
It
order.
is not about our processes. We don't have a process.
I've
for
raised the
this.
point of order. You must address the point of order, Mr. President.
What is your point of order?
My point of order is there's a motion on the table made by Commissioner Bukacek to defer, and the discussion needs to go to that motion.
Okay, I would say I am on that because you're talking process. There is no process. This is brand new. It's historic. It's the commission standing up and fighting back. There is no process to say, oh, well, other issues? Yeah, they can come up. And if we have to vote them in or vote them out, that's the way it works here. But there is no time to, hey, well, let's see what staff comes up with. Whatever they come up with, it's out of the product of a black box. So who cares? It's a secret negotiation that we're going to ratify. That, my point is, we can't do that. So why waste our time on it? Let's actually get the facts. That is not difficult to do. They can keep doing what they're doing, and we can schedule a hearing. And if we come up with they were right, we haven't lost any time. If we wait to see what they come up with and then have another hearing and then say, but you haven't written it out well enough for me. Question is, why didn't you write it out well enough yourself? We are professionals here. I'm asking for a commitment to have a hearing. I'm not saying they shouldn't keep doing what they're doing. I'm saying based on it, if it's based on a black box, it's of no value because the facts and the law is all they can present.
Mr. President,
all we can vote on.
point of order. You're redebating the earlier discussion, and this is just simply when should we bring this up? Should we bring this up again now, or should we vote on it today? That's a question that's on the table right now. The motion was to
No,
defer.
the question is why should we step away from the original motion? And I'm trying to point out that is a it's a fool's errand because we run out of time.
I don't believe you made a motion.
I'm discussing.
I made a
our-
motion.
I didn't make a motion either.
Okay. Well, no, I'm saying her motion kills it without stabbing it in the heart. It
Mr.
just withers
President,
on the vine.
I haven't made a motion. The motion was by Commissioner Bukacek to defer this matter so we can look into it further, get further information, and make an informed decision.
Is there any further discussion? The motion is to defer. Those who would like to defer this and not move on my motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion fails. Back on the original motion. Unless there's further discussion, all those in favor,
I have further discussion. Mr. President,
And Mr. President, there is no original motion. You have not made a motion yet.
Okay, well, I'm going to do that now before we go any further. My motion is to act upon rejecting Northwestern Energy et al. Settlement on the current electric rate case and direct staff to schedule a hearing on the issue of Yellowstone Generation Plant and the Coal Strip Plant and other issues without any settlements / black boxes. All those is there a second?
I'll second.
A motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. President,
Commissioner?
I want to go back to what Vice President Fielder said about you just giving us one sheet. It's a half sheet. And you obviously have a narrative prepared for yourself, but you did not share that with us. And it sounds like you had 2 weeks that you
Well-
were working on it. And we have nothing to work on other than your narrative.
Everything from my narrative is in the email you received from Amanda several days ago.
That's not true, sir.
I've highlighted it. Anything else? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion that was seconded signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign.
No.
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 3-2, motion dies. We're out of business.
Thank you, staff.
Item number 3, 2025.08.59, Northwestern Energy Wildfire Mitigation Plan. To discuss using a limited solicitation. Sorry guys, I bit my cheek and it keeps getting caught. Wildfire mitigation plan. To discuss using a limited solicitation to procure a technical master. Master.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, Commissioners. My name is Will Rosequist. I'm the Regulatory Division Administrator here at the Commission. With me is Pamela Snyder-Varnes of your legal team. So at last week's business meeting, the Commission approved issuing an invitation for bids to procure a technical master to advise it on Northwestern Energy's wildfire mitigation plan. Staff began working with the State Procurement Bureau to implement that commission decision immediately. On Friday, it was determined that if the invitation for bids was to be issued today, October 14th, which was the earliest possible day for issuing the invitation for bids, the deadline for receiving bids would be set on November 4th, and a contract could be in place by November 11th. That time frame was considerably longer than what we had hoped would be possible under the invitation for bid procurement process, and it doesn't align with the commission decision time frame that staff had previously outlined, which, if you recall, called for a report by the consultant to be delivered on November 10th, so that the commission could hold a work session on November 18th and render its decision by November 24th. So the State Procurement Bureau suggested that we consider issuing a limited solicitation, an alternative procurement approach that would be much quicker. It's available for services costing less than $100,000, and you're required to get quotes from at least 3 providers. Because the limited solicitation is not what the commission approved and differs in material respects from what the commission proposed or decided, staff believed it was necessary to bring the matter back to the commission so that the commission could decide whether changing from an invitation to bid process to limited solicitation process was acceptable. So that's why we're here today. There are a couple other nuances to this that I'll get into. On Friday, I sent an email because this is an out-of-cycle work session, giving the commission a heads up about this work session. In that email, I mistakenly indicated that the commission might need to waive a provision in the internal policy manual in order to implement a limited solicitation. That was a mistake because there is no mechanism in the internal policy manual for waiving the provision regarding limited solicitations, which in the internal policy manual limits those to $25,000 or less. So as I see it, the commission has.
Before you go on, Mr. Rosequist, I believe that there's a provision in the internal policy manual that does allow the contract to exceed $25,000, but it just requires commission approval. So a waiver's not needed. There is a provision that would allow that, correct?
Mr. President, Commissioner Fielder, or Vice President Fielder, that's possible. I think I'm not necessarily comfortable in making the call on how those provisions should be interpreted. There is a section specific to limited solicitations that says that the commission can use a limited solicitation for services costing less than $25,000. There's another section in the IPM, in the procurement section, that talks about contracts and the requirement for contracts to be signed. That may enable the commission to approve a limited solicitation contract for more than $25,000. And if the commission interprets the internal policy manual that way, that's great. Then we could proceed with that option. But I'm not necessarily alone willing to make the call on how that should be interpreted.
I appreciate that. Thanks for letting me ask the question. I think it is, as I recall, the State Procurement Bureau officer would have to agree to it as well as the commission because it has something to do with the Procurement Bureau processes and their requirements. But we did try to build some flexibility into the IPM for that instance. So I think there's something there. And you're right, the commission ultimately interprets its bylaws, so I think it could do that.
So, Mr. President, Commissioners, depending on how you would like to interpret your internal policy manual, I think you have some options. You could potentially stick with the invitation for bid process and shift the decision-making timeframe. For example, determine that you will address this issue on the last possible day of November 24th. That would allow you to shift out the timing of when work session materials would be provided and when you would want the report from the consultant ultimately selected. But I would point out that if the State Procurement Bureau timeframe is followed and the contract isn't in place until November 11th, you would still be under a very short time frame. I anticipate that in order to get a report from the consultant about a week before your decision, you're talking like November 17th. So that would give the consultant 6 days basically to do their evaluation and submit a report. And as we talked about, I think in one of the prior work sessions, maybe there is a question of whether you adhere to the November 24th timeframe, if there's some basis for balancing the importance to the commission of bringing on board a technical master to advise it. Maybe that weighs against trying to make sure you hit that statutory timeframe. Alternatively, you could issue a limited solicitation, and that could be done in potentially two ways. If you think that the internal policy manual is binding in terms of the $25,000 limit, you could still issue the limited solicitation with the constraint that all bids would have to be $25,000 or less than $25,000. Or if you interpret the internal policy manual as giving you some flexibility to use a limited solicitation for services costing less than $100,000, then I think that's probably the most preferable option. And lastly, and as we've discussed before, you could abandon the whole procurement effort if none of those options are acceptable. And that is all I had to present, Mr. President.
Mr. President, may I ask Will a couple questions?
Please.
So the limited solicitation, it says requires the commission to specify at least 3 qualified entities. So what's the process for finding those entities and how do we decide if they're qualified or not, or who decides that?
Mr. President, Commissioner Bukacek, yeah, good question. At this point, I would anticipate just using the 3 entities that staff has identified as wanting to be added to the list of vendors that we were going to use for the invitation for bids process. That would just be based on, my search and identification of entities that have readily accessible and kind of verifiable experience in this area. But yeah, you'd have to, I guess, kind of trust that I did a reasonable job in identifying some qualified bidders.
follow-up?
Please.
So those three entities that you've identified, so will their information is given to us and then we look at it and then vote next week? Or how does it go from there?
Mr. President, Commissioner Bukacek, I guess that's up to the commission how you'd like to handle that. When we were pursuing the invitation for bid process, I forwarded these entities on to the State Procurement Bureau so they could add them to their vendor list for that approach. So I could do the same for the commission and, whatever process you guys would find acceptable for reviewing those to see if they're reasonable. If it's a work session next week, if you want to have an out of cycle later this week, however you guys would like to approach that, I think is up to you.
Just a thought on the question I asked earlier. I do see the section you're referring to, Will, about limited solicitation. So yeah, there's a specific limit on limited solicitations in here, and that does not provide a provision for exceeding $25,000, but the contracts section does. But the contract section would have to meet the approval of the commission and the State Procurement Bureau. So you're talking specifically about a limited solicitation process. Is that correct here? Now?
I think so, Vice President Fielder. And I am talking about using a limited solicitation. So I think that falls under the section 2.6.3. And that's where I'm getting the $25,000 limit from. But I do acknowledge that there is a section on contracts that talks about all contracts exceeding $25,000 must be approved by State Procurement Bureau contract officer and by the commission. And so if there's a way of reading those two sections kind of together to give the commission the flexibility. But again, I'm not sure I can read it that way myself.
Yeah, I don't think it can be read that way either. Limited solicitations is specified. There's a range on that. So is it feasible to, is it still feasible to put this out and get a quality product back within the timetables that we have?
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, at this point, I don't know. I think it's feasible to get a limited solicitation out with the $25,000 limitation on it. That's very feasible.
Okay.
Whether any of these entities will bid with that $25,000 constraint there, and if they do bid, whether we can expect a quality product for $25,000 or less, is, I guess, an open question. I don't know how to answer that.
But we would have the opportunity to review their qualifications and their ability to meet the needs. So we wouldn't be just necessarily throwing $25,000 at whoever bids lowest. We would be able to screen those bidders if we do yield bidders and identify their qualifications and then choose the best qualified one that can do this within that budget cap.
I think, Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, I think the way the limited solicitation works is very similar to the invitation for bid process, where the difference being you say, these are the three, at least three, you have to have at least three. These are the three entities that we want offers from. And because you've designated entities that you've sort of pre-qualified as able to do the work, whoever comes in the lowest is the one you take, unless you decide for some reason, perhaps after checking references, that you decide you don't want to select them, in which case the whole process is terminated at that point and you would have to start over.
Okay. Thanks for the refresher. I'm starting to remember this from the, some of the procurement processes I've been involved in. So, do we have three, qualified, companies that we could solicit for this work?
I feel we have three. As I mentioned, I sent three names to the State Procurement Bureau. I'd be happy to circulate those names to the commission today so that you could all take a look at them. And deferring to legal, maybe we could undertake a process where if nobody has any objections to those three entities by sometime over the next couple of days, then we just commit to submitting those to the State Procurement Bureau as the three that we'd like to get offers from.
Okay, thank you. And, for the scope of work, are you anticipating the same scope of work that was laid out in the prior process that the commission approved?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Hear a motion? Randy, Commissioner Panoche.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll make a motion to accept staff recommendations, and I feel comfortable putting in my motion that you have the ability to go over $25,000. I think it's important here that we have a technical master.
Just to be clear, there is no staff recommendation on this, so I think the motion would be to use a limited solicitation process to procure a technical master.
Well, if I'm correct, you gave us some options. One of them was to spend more than 25,000, but you'd need the commission approval to do so. Is that correct? And I understand state procurement may want to approve that, but I'm thinking that if I put in my motion that you could spend more than $25,000, would that help you get this accomplished?
Well, Mr. President, Commissioner Panoche, I think what I said was the commission would have to make that interpretation of the internal policy manual. I think there's been some discussion of that. My interpretation, my personal interpretation is that the internal policy manual does not allow for that. And so we're constrained to $25,000. You could separately disagree with my interpretation and make a motion that the commission interpret it differently first and see where that goes.
Let me ask you this, Will. Am I able to say, can we vote on it as commissioners to go above the 25,000? Or you're thinking that the answer to that is no?
The answer to that is no,
But we can't even vote on that. Okay.
not as the IPM is currently written.
All right. So then I'll make my motion to the limit of $25,000. Is that something that you'd agree with?
Mr. President, Commissioner Panoche, that was definitely one of the options that I laid out. So that's a perfectly acceptable motion.
Okay. Then that's my motion to spend up to 25,000 on this. Thank you.
I would like to second that, and that having been seconded, out of all the options that were brought forward, Will, that one seems to be the most wimpy. Do we have any latitude at all to get a little more money on the table within our timeframes?
Mr. President, I'm not aware of one.
Yeah, so just to be clear, sure I'm clear, or that I understand the motion. The motion is to use a limited solicitation to procure a technical master, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And the limited solicitation limits are outlined in the IPM, and those are consistent with the state procurement bureau and state laws on procurement. So I can support the motion. I think that it keeps us within the law. It allows us to move forward to see if we can get someone that can do this. But I just want to make darn sure that they can do a good job if we're going to spend money on it. So we're be careful when we're reviewing those, that we're able to verify that whoever bids on this can actually produce the level of work that we're interested in. There may need to be more detail in that limited solicitation in terms of what our expectations are.
Is there any further discussion on the motion which has been made and seconded? Seeing none, all those in favor? Oh, sorry.
I have a process question, if I may, and for either whoever would like to jump in, but is there, let's just say hypothetically, we find somebody for the, $24,999, if you will, and they're able to do the work and we get into this and they're doing good work. Is there any procedure available to us that we could revisit this midstream and re-up a subsequent contract, or is this an aggregate amount that, one and done?
Mr. President, Commissioner Wellborn, I don't actually know the answer to that. I feel like if you were to try to extend that contract and add more money to it, that would probably violate some kind of regulations that the State Procurement Bureau has, because it seems like a way of circumventing the, I should take that back, because the State Procurement Bureau's limit on limited solicitations is $100,000. It's the internal policy manual that's limiting us to $25,000. So in that case, it would be sort of trying to circumvent the internal policy manual, I guess.
And I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot here, and that wasn't where I was, I guess where my mind was going is if things are working out well and we're moving along, if there's a mechanism that we could, in other words, it doesn't stop us in our tracks when good work is being done. It would be more of a way to chain up on all fours and keep moving.
That might require some additional legal commission work to interpret the limited solicitation component of the IPM. Because like I said, again, under the State Procurement Bureau rules, you could have a total contract value that exceeds $100,000. It's just how are we going to interpret the IPM?
So when you're finished.
President Molnar, Commissioner Wellborn, you have a couple of different constraints here, three really. You have the IPM limitation of $25,000. You have the timing of all of this. And I don't believe anything would constrain the commission from engaging in a new contract process, whether it's a limited solicitation or an invitation for bids. The question would be, what work would the contractor do at that point, since we would be beyond the time limit to make a decision on Northwestern's plan. Certainly the money could be spent on a consultant to a technical expert to assist with rulemaking and that type of effort. But for Northwestern's plan, the timing would make it impossible.
Yeah, and I hadn't thought my way through to that end when I asked the question, but I appreciate you taking us there. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Just a comment, Mr. President and
Please.
members, just for some context. So this procurement policy was one of the first ones the commission adopted when it undertook the revisions to the internal policies. It was and it was largely written by the person who was our internal auditor on staff at the department at that time, because the agency had been into some problems with its audits, and he worked largely on the fiscal section of policies that you have here. And so just to give you some context, the limited solicitation is you go out and you get 3 bids and you can pick one. And so that's why there's a cap, so that people aren't just going out getting 3 bids and then spending a lot of money on something. So I'm not sure why the cap was set at 25,000 at that time, but it was set. by the commission. So these other procurement is a really rigorous process for state using state funds above that amount. And I think that's where we're in the conundrum is staff advised us about 5-6 weeks ago that I believe that they didn't believe that it was really feasible to move forward with, the standard procurement process, and that they felt they could do much of the work that was required under the bill. And so that's the warnings that they gave us a couple months ago, 6 weeks ago, however long ago it was, are just, ringing true now. It's a very complex process. And so we're down to now, if we want to do something, and we want to do it quickly and meet these timeframes, we got to basically find three, try to ask three bidders. You have to have at least 3 bids on it. And then, we're going to, by the timeframes that we have at best, they're going to have a few days to review the plan and give us something. Is that better than nothing? Maybe, but we're just really running up against it right now, because I think the lateness of the timeframes that were in the statute as it was passed were already difficult, and there were some delays in actually having staff start moving forward on this after the legislature passed the law. And so the time is just whittling away. It's getting skinnier and skinnier to be able to do, quality work on this. What about splitting this out, Will, where staff does the assessment regarding the requirements of fulfilling the statute, and just let the contractor focus on the other elements that are required under the statute, the review of the actual mitigation plan, in terms of its effect. Would that be helpful, or would that complicate things and slow it down? I don't want to slow it down.
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, I mean, I can see some logic there. It might slow things down a little bit to the extent we need to revise the scope of work. I don't think it would take too long. I interpret what you're saying to be have the consultant focus on like the elements that the commission is required to make findings on, as opposed to that portion of House Bill 490, which talks about the elements that are supposed to be included in the plan, put their work on the public interest and balancing of incremental costs and the risk of a wildfire, put their work on that, because that's the most critical from the commission's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be
I mean,
fine with doing that.
If we did that, members, then, we could allow staff to do what they can do, and then only spend the funds on these other elements that would be helpful to have the outside expertise on that we don't have in-house. I'm seeing some heads nod on that. So I'll move to amend the motion and bifurcate the contract. Will, can you rephrase for me the section that we would have the contractor focus on?
Don't think I brought it would be House Bill 490, Section 2, subsection 6. Is that what you refer to? But, right, so the motion would be to amend the prior motion, I guess, to focus the scope of work on the items in House Bill 490, Section 2, subsection 6.
I will trust that you've got the right section. The intent of the motion is to allow staff to do the work that it's perfectly capable of doing on assessing whether the plan meets the elements of the law, and then have the contractor work on the technical expertise required of outside services.
Is there a second to
I
that
second.
motion? We have a motion, we have a Now, before I say that, apparently there's a question, sir.
Procedural question. Does, do we need to move forward, Vice President Fielder, would we be better off asking the sponsor of the motion if it's friendly, or do we need to act on that and then move forward? Because I want to make sure that we're doing this the right way. I mean, I like where you're going with this. I think it gives us an opportunity to maximize our dollar and staff time and move forward in an effective way and maybe have a better chance of hitting an exercise in futility. But I just want to make sure that as we move forward with this, we're doing it in the right manner.
Sure. So under Robert's rules, it's not required to state whether it's friendly or a hostile motion, but the sponsor of the original amendment could certainly weigh in and say he sees it as friendly or not. But that is not really, I mean, the basis of our vote is if the majority believe that that's a good amendment, then we vote for it. And if we don't, then we vote against it and we're back to the original motion.
Commissioner Panucci.
My question is, do I still get a technical master? I believe the answer is yes, but I want to make
Yeah.
sure that. All right, thank you, because that's my initial goal. I want to make sure that we do our best to try to obtain the technical master. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Consider it friendly.
And thanks for the clarification there, or asking for it. I think that's important.
Okay, seeing no further questions. Quite the lack of documents.
President,
Supporting documents, sir.
can I clarify whether the motion involves the commission, a process for the commission to approve the entities, or whether that's left to staff?
I'll just throw this out there. I don't know that was covered in this, but wait for the next work session. The next work session, we're bumping up against it. Last time, I think we can maybe not assume that all commissioners have access to this as we're going through it. As long as nobody raises a red flag, I think we can trust you to take a look at these and talk to us in the hall, whatever, send out some emails. I don't know, we have to get real formal. But do you think that we need to have another work session, knowing that even if it's out of cycle, it's 48 hours that are gone? Is it a necessity under the IPM or any other source that we must vote once the low bid of once the bid comes in? Because if we just get one, I'm thinking that's at 25,000, we're not going to get a flood of people.
So, Mr. President, I think I appreciate where you're coming from. I think the most expeditious approach to this would be just to use the three that we've already provided to the State Procurement Bureau, get the solicitation out there. It's my understanding that this process can move fairly quickly. In a prior work session, we did talk about the commission being the one that gives the final approval to enter the contract with the entity that's selected or that wins the bid. So what I anticipate doing after this work session, working with the State Procurement Bureau, possibly getting this out this week. They said because of the way these processes work, we could get offers very quickly. I would schedule, it would have to be an out of cycle at this point, a work session for next week, so that the commission, if we get through this process and that fast, would be in a position to sign off on the winning bidder at that point. And then we would be, I think, in pretty good shape timing wise.
Mr. President, we don't have to do that. The that's where the contract section of the policy comes in. If it's over 25,000, it would have to come to the commission, but it doesn't. We can leave this, entrust it with the staff to solicit and find and procure appropriate contractor under the limited solicitation section. And that's what I would anticipate doing at this point. If you want to assign a commissioner to work with staff on it, that would be your prerogative as chair, but. Or the commission could move to assign someone to it if they wanted to.
I'm perfectly comfortable, somebody answering this, you're looking at, words on a page. You may or may not get references. They may or may not be accurate. They may be referring to the company that, handled it for them. Now you've got a new person in that position. I'm perfectly comfortable with having Will do it, but if somebody else wants to make a motion, they can do so.
Well, I think we have a motion to vote on, and that was to amend the original motion so that the contractor can focus on the technical expertise areas of wildfire mitigation, and the staff would handle the procedural, whether the plan satisfied the elements of what's required in the plan. So if we could vote on that motion, then we can vote on the original motion, and we could probably be done with this.
I call for the question on the motion.
Is there any other discussion? Although, in favor of the substitute motion, is that where we're at? Is it
Motion to amend.
a motion to amend? Will signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Carries 5-0.
And now to the main motion as amended.
And the main motion that we just amended, those all in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same. Carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
There are no announcements at this time. The date of the next business meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, October 21, 2025. This concludes the meeting. Seeing no further business to come before the commission, for the record, the time is 3:53 p.m. and the day is October 14, 2025. This meeting is adjourned.